Hello, in this video I'll demonstrate how to generate regression statistics using SPSS and also using Excel, and then we'll be able to contrast the results from each application. Right, then that way you can actually see the similarities and differences. Right, hopefully you will be able to appreciate the differences in the processes that we actually use to generate regression statistics in the two applications because they are slightly different, even though the outcome is going to be generally the same. Right, so again, you be the judge at the end and see which one seems to work better for you. All right, so here I begin by looking at this particular data file. I'm going to be using this exactly the same data file. I've already imported this data file from Excel into SPSS, and I also have it available in Excel here as well. So I'll begin by using SPSS. So I have the data file ready, and all I have to do in SPSS is to go to Analyze, and under Analyze I go to Regression, and under Regression I select Linear. Okay, so then I have a dialog box here, and I have to select the dependent variable. In this case is the weekly gross revenue. Right, so I select it and click on the arrow so that it's actually selected, and then for the next two, they are actually independent variables. So television advertising, and then we have newspaper advertising. Right, and then of course at this stage you can with SPSS you will be able to find more options that you may want to specify, but in this case we just want to see the default results that will actually emerge, and we'll follow exactly the same method as well in Excel, so that we are kind of comparing apples with apples. Right. Okay, so once you've done this, it's a very simple process. Then you can just go ahead and say okay. All right, so it generates the regression results that we need right there. As you can see, it was very quick, right, with SPSS, because SPSS obviously is designed specifically for statistical analysis. Right, so now that we have this information here, we can switch over to Excel so that we can perform similar activity. Now in Excel, you go to Data tab, and under Data tab, you should be able to see Data Analysis. Now, the difference here is that if you do not see it on your computer, it means it's not activated. So you would have to go to File, and then you go to Options, and under Options, you'll be able to see Add-ins. You click on that, and then you'll see Manage Excel Add-ins. You go to Go, and then you have to have a check mark on the Analysis Tool pack. Right, so even though the Analysis Tool pack is a function that's actually available in Excel, it needs to be activated in order for it to be available. Right, unlike in SPSS, it's already there, everything's already set up because it's specifically for statistical tools. So whereas in Excel it says, well, I'm a general purpose application, but I do have that functionality as well if you can activate it. Right, so now that we have it activated, we can go ahead and click on Data, and then under Data we should be able to find Regression. Okay, and then all we have to do here is to input the input Y range, which is our dependent variable. So we select it. Okay, and then we go to input X range, which is our independent variables. We select both of them. Right, and then we have to specify that the first rows are going to be labels. As you can see, those column headings. And of course, confidence level is going to be 95. We can put a check mark, or we don't even have to put it. It will still recognize that because that's a default setting. And then output range, we actually, in Excel, we have to specify where we want our results to be. Whereas in SPSS, we didn't have to do that. It automatically output the results on a separate page, which again in Excel, it gives you the same option too. We can put in a separate page or in a separate file. We can put on the same page, right? So in this case, we want it to begin there, the results. And then once we've done that, Everything else we do not necessarily have to check. We're just going with the with the default setting, just like we did with the SPSS. Then that will be able to compare apples with apples. We go ahead and say okay. All right, now you see that with Excel it just generates the results, but we need also to clean up a little bit. In SPSS we didn't have to clean up anything at all, right? Because it pretty much comes standard. Now what you also notice is that in Excel the lower and upper is repeated twice, so we get rid of the last two which are redundant. We delete that. And you also notice that the decimal places, they are quite long, right? Okay, but anyway, for the purpose of comparison, we are not going to change anything there. So what we can do now is we can minimize this page so that we will be able to compare. Okay, let's see if we can split the screen, then that we will be able to compare the two. Okay, I think this should be about right. Okay. Now, okay, this is the Excel results. Put it there, and all right. Okay, so I want to be able to see the results themselves, even if I wanted to maximize this. That's a little bit more readable, right? Okay, so now when we actually begin to compare these, we'll find that Excel generates information from the model summary section going downwards, right? Whereas SPSS, we know, will give you some additional information: variable entered and removed, dependent variable, what is a dependent variable, what is an independent variable, and so forth. So it's kind of just giving you some background information right there. But really, what is of interest would be beginning the model summary, which is the equivalent of regression statistics right there, right? We see multiple R, we also see R there. You see the numbers are about the same, right? Okay, and R square is the same as that, adjusted R square. We also adjusted R square, and of course we also see the standard error, right? The only difference in this particular section is that the sample size is not specified in SPSS, whereas here it's also included, right? So you could take that regression statistics section is equivalent to the model summary in SPSS. Then the next section is ANOVA, which pretty much matches that too. And we are actually able to see here that in terms of presentation, the statistical significance is about the same as that, but it's a little more abbreviated in SPSS, right? And the F-test, you can see is there, it's the same. And what you can actually notice here is that in Excel, there is more formatting that's actually required to limit the number of decimal places, whereas in ANOVA, that's already done, or rather in SPSS, it's already done, for example, in this particular section there. And we can actually compare the mean square, they're about the same. The sum of squares, they're about the same, right? Now the other difference you notice is that when you're using SPSS, you have no way of actually checking out the numbers. Whereas in Excel, you have the luxury of understanding that the sum of square regression as expressed on total sum of squares is what gives you the R square. See this R square here? It's actually made up of this value divided by that value, right? So now in SPSS, you are not able to do any calculations on this particular screen. You have to do that manually elsewhere, right? And of course, here we actually able to see that our F-test is a result of the mean square divided by residual mean square, right? So we're actually able to double check some of those in numbers right there. Okay, so we can see that the ANOVA is about exactly the same pretty much, even though there's a slight variation in the presentation, whereas in Excel, the degree of freedom comes first. Here it's actually in the middle. Right? Okay, it's actually in the middle right there. And there's some additional notes that's actually provided down there in SPSS. Right, okay, it looks like Excel is not smart enough to know how to do that. Then finally, the final section is actually called the coefficients section, right? That is where you have the p-value, right? The p-value is actually your equivalent of sig, statistical significant, right there. Okay, here we can see 0.025, 0.025, 0.003, 0.003. So they all match. And then the coefficients, we are actually able to see that the coefficients for every change for the additional dollar that we put in the television advertising, it generates $22 in revenue, right? And for every additional dollar in newspaper advertising, it generates about $19 of revenue, right? And that matches that too, right? But of course, this can actually vary. Let me see here. Do I have? Just wanted to make sure that I have everything that I need right there. Right. Okay. Now, what you notice is that in Excel, it also gives you the lower and the upper, which means that you can generate for every additional dollar in television advertising $22, but it can be as low as $4 and can be as high as $41. And the same is true for the newspaper advertising. For every additional dollar in advertising, you generate $19 in revenue. Can be as low as $10, can be as high as $29. So again, that is actually very useful. It's very insightful just to understand the variation of the results, right, can vary in between because we do have standard error, right, by the way. Okay, so, right. So that's the only difference I'm actually seeing there between the two. But it's important also to recognize that in SPSS you should be able to generate the lower and the upper values as well, so that you can make direct comparison with Excel. But otherwise, generally speaking, you can see that the result that actually generated are about the same, right? And but however, you may actually have noticed that the processes were quite different, right, in SPSS because it's dedicated to statistical analysis. We didn't have to do a lot of steps, whereas in Excel, we definitely had to do a lot of steps. First of all, we had to activate the analysis tool pack, and then after that, when we're actually selecting the dependent variable, we actually had to select a range, whereas in SPSS, we just picked that particular variable and it automatically pick the range by itself in the background. And the same was true for the independent variables as well. But we actually had to select them in Excel, but in SPSS we didn't have to. We just select the independent variables and automatically they pick up the values. Hopefully you'll find this very useful, kind of comparing SPSS and Excel side by side so that you can actually see the similarities and the differences. And it's important to kind of just appreciate some of those differences and those similarities. And obviously from this, you should be able to have an idea why many publications, if you wanted to submit your work for publication, there is no guarantee that you could generate your regression statistics using Excel and be accepted, because SPSS is well established in other statistical applications. They've already been accepted by publications, so it's always important to know that. But again, you can actually see the reason why you could want to practice with Excel so that you can understand what underlies those numbers, so that you can actually develop a much deeper understanding of the numbers themselves, so that when you're using another statistical tool, you actually understand where the numbers are actually coming from, because Excel gives you the benefit of actually calculating and proving the numbers right there while they're actually on the same screen. Okay, so hopefully you found that useful, and again, like the video, share the video, and be sure to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and bye for now.